The dance of humility begins quietly, almost deceptively so, as if the world itself is holding its breath to see how you will carry what you have learned. There is no dramatic entrance, no thunder announcing its arrival. Humility does not crash into your life. It slips in unnoticed, disguised as restraint, disguised as silence, disguised as the absence of applause. You feel it the moment you choose not to speak when you could have, the moment you let a moment pass without claiming it, and something inside you aches, not with weakness, but with unfamiliar discipline. You had imagined humility as surrender, as shrinking, as stepping backward into the shadows, but this version feels different, heavier, more demanding. It asks you to stand fully in yourself without leaning on recognition. It asks you to hold your fire without letting it scorch the room, and that restraint, you quickly learn, is far harder than dominance. The world tests you immediately. Situations arise where you could assert yourself, where your experience, your insight, your growth would justify being heard. You feel the words form in your chest, sharp and ready. You feel the old instinct rise, the need to prove that your journey has meaning, that your battles were not invisible. But humility places a hand on your shoulder, firm and unyielding. Not now, seems to say, not for this reason. You begin to notice how often people speak not to communicate, but to establish position. Conversations feel like subtle competitions, masked as dialogue. You recognize the rhythm because you once danced it unconsciously. Now, stepping back, you see the patterns clearly, the interruptions, the exaggerations, the carefully placed achievements slipped into casual sentences, and you feel the temptation to join in, to reclaim space, to remind the room who you are becoming. Instead, you listen. At first, listening feels like erasure, like letting yourself fade. Your mind races with unfinished sentences and unspoken truths. You worry that silence will be mistaken for weakness, that humility will be misread as submission. And in some cases, it is. Some people speak over you without noticing. Others underestimate you. A few mistake your restraint for emptiness. Each moment stings quietly, a test of resolve. But humility is not passive. You begin to understand that it is an active choice, a controlled stillness. You are not shrinking. You are grounding. You are not disappearing. You are observing. You start to feel the power in letting others reveal themselves without interference. You hear insecurity hiding behind confidence. You hear fear wrapped in authority. You hear longing beneath arrogance. And suddenly, the need to compete dissolves into clarity. There's a moment when someone challenges you openly, questioning your decisions, your direction, your worth. The old version of you would have reacted instantly, sharpening words into weapons. This time, you pause. The silence stretches. Eyes turn. The air tightens. You feel the weight of expectation pressing against your chest. Say something. Defend yourself. Prove it. You choose calm instead. You answer without venom, without performance, without the need to dominate the exchange. Your words are measured, honest, unembellished, and in that simplicity, something shifts. The challenge loses its edge. The moment passes without escalation. You walk away with your dignity intact, your energy preserved. For the first time, you realize humility does not cost you power. It saves it. Still, the struggle is internal. Alone, doubt creeps in. You question whether restraint is always wise. You wonder if silence allows injustice to breathe. Humility demands discernment, not withdrawal. You wrestle with this tension, knowing that humility without courage becomes invisibility, and courage without humility becomes arrogance. The dance requires balance, and balance requires constant adjustment. You reflect on where arrogance once protected you, how confidence sometimes masked fear, how dominance once felt like safety. Letting go of those defenses feels like exposure. Without them, you must trust your core. You must believe that your value does not evaporate when unacknowledged. That belief is fragile at first, trembling under old habits and external pressure. Days pass and you begin to sense a deeper shift. You no longer feel the urge to announce your progress. You You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop rehearsing victories that haven't been requested. There is a quiet confidence forming, one that does not rush forward, one that does not demand space. It simply exists. You notice how people respond differently now. Some lean in, curious about your calm. Others grow uncomfortable, unsettled by your refusal to perform. A few project their own insecurities onto you, interpreting your humility as judgment. You learn to let those interpretations pass. You cannot control how humility is received. You can only control how sincerely you practice it. One night, alone again, you reflect on the journey so far, the battles fought, the comparisons shed, the purpose reignited. You see how humility stitches these lessons together, not as a conclusion, but as a refinement. It polishes the edges of your strength, making it usable, sustainable. Strength without humility burns out. Humility without strength collapses. Together, they endure. You realize something else then, something unsettling. Humility does not end the struggle. It makes it quieter, but deeper. Without external validation as fuel, you must face your own expectations more directly. You can no longer blame pressure from others. If you fall short now, it is between you and yourself. That truth settles heavily. The next challenge looms not as an enemy, but as a responsibility. Leadership, influence, impact. Humility has prepared you not to chase these things, but to be tested by them, because soon you will be placed in positions where your choices affect others, where restraint matters, where ego could undo everything you've built. As you stand at the edge of this realization, you feel the weight of what's coming. Humility has taught you how to bow without breaking, how to listen without vanishing. But the next chapter will ask something even harder. It will ask whether you can carry power without letting it change who you are. And the world is already watching, even if you no longer need it to. The inner fortress opens with a question that follows you into the silence of your own mind. A question that does not shout but waits patiently in the dark. What happens when the world stops clapping, when no one is watching, when approval dries up and criticism becomes background noise? What is left standing inside you then? You feel that question settle into your chest as you wake before dawn. The city still half asleep, the air cold and uncommitted. This is the hour where excuses are born or buried, and you already know which one you are here to face. Your life looks stable from the outside now. You have survived early battles, learned restraint, tasted humility, and stepped into purpose. But stability is not safety. Beneath the surface, pressure still builds. Doubt still knocks. Old voices still whisper at the edges of your thoughts. The difference is that now, you don't run from them. You stay. You listen. You prepare. Nathaniel Branden once wrote that self-esteem is the reputation you acquire with yourself, and this chapter is where that reputation is tested, not through grand achievements, but through quiet consistency. You begin to understand that confidence without arrogance requires an inner structure strong enough to stand alone, an inner fortress. Every day brings small sieges, a dismissive comment, a delayed result, a comparison that sneaks in when you're tired. These moments are subtle, almost harmless, but you feel how they chip away at focus if left unchecked. Before, you would react outwardly, proving, explaining, defending. Now the battle turns inward. You notice the reflex, pause, and choose a different response. You do not attack the world. You reinforce your walls. The fortress is not built from isolation. It is built from principles, responsibility, integrity, self-acceptance, self-assertiveness. Each one forms a layer, a wall, a foundation stone laid deliberately. You remember the pillar of responsibility, how it taught you to stop blaming circumstances. Here, that lesson deepens. You stop blaming moods. You stop blaming motives. You stop waiting to feel ready. You act because action is who you are becoming. There are days when the fortress feels unfinished. Cracks appear. You wake with heaviness, questioning whether all this inner work has actually changed anything. The world still feels harsh. Progress still feels slow. In those moments, the temptation to seek validation roars louder than ever. A compliment would help, recognition would soothe. But the fortress is built specifically for these hours. It is built so you don't have to leave yourself to survive. You sit alone one evening, the room dim, city lights flickering through the window like distant fires. A memory surfaces, someone once saying you had potential but lacked follow through. The words sting even now. Your chest tightens. Old anger stirs. Prove them wrong, the voice says. Show them. You catch yourself. That voice is not strength. That voice is dependence wearing armor. Instead, another voice rises, calmer, steadier. You don't need to prove anything. You need to continue. The shift is subtle but profound. Your actions no longer point outward. They point inward. Each disciplined choice becomes a brick laid carefully into place. Each moment of restraint becomes reinforcement. Each honest self-reflection becomes a watchtower. Brandon spoke of living consciously, of honoring the fact that reality exists independent of wishes. You live that now. You stop romanticizing progress. You see clearly where you are strong and where you are fragile. And instead of self-contempt, you offer self-respect, not indulgence, respect, the kind that demands effort without cruelty. There is a turning point when someone close to you doubts your direction. Their concern is wrapped in care, but the message lands heavy. Are you sure this is working? Are you sure you're not chasing something unrealistic? The old you would have internalized the doubt, replayed it endlessly, allowed it to rot confidence from the inside. This time, you listen without absorbing. You think them. You walk away. Inside the fortress, the doubt is examined, not obeyed. You begin to feel a strange peace forming, not because life has become easier, but because your inner reactions have become steadier. You don't swing wildly between confidence and collapse anymore. You bend, you recover, you continue. This is resilience born not from toughness, but from self-trust. Still, the fortress is not invincible. Late at night, exhaustion lowers the gates. In quiet moments, fear slips in, wearing familiar faces. What if this is as far as you go? What if you lose everything you've built? The fear is sharp, intelligent, convincing. You let it speak, you let it finish, and then you respond, not with denial, but with presence. I am here. I am capable. I will respond when the time comes. This is the moment you realize the fortress is not meant to keep the world out. It is meant to keep you intact within it. You still feel, you still care, you still risk, but you are no longer hollow inside. External chaos does not instantly become internal collapse. Opportunities begin to shift subtly. People sense your steadiness. They test it. Some respect it. Others challenge it. Leadership starts knocking quietly, not with praise, but with responsibility. Decisions now affect more than just you, and the fortress holds, not because it is rigid, but because it is grounded. You remember another idea from Brandon's work, that self-esteem grows from the practice of integrity. Here, integrity is not moral posturing. It is alignment. What you think, what you say, what you do, slowly, painfully, they begin to match. The inner friction lessens. The noise quiets. You feel solid. As this chapter closes, you stand within yourself, aware that fortresses attract sieges. Strength invites tests. The world will not stop challenging you because you have grown. It will challenge you because you have grown. And something is coming that will not attack your skills or your discipline. It will attack your values. The walls are built. The fire is steady. But the next battle will ask whether this fortress can withstand temptation, pressure, and power itself. And you can already feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. The test of truth begins with a question that does not feel philosophical but personal, almost accusatory, as if it rises from the floor beneath your feet rather than your thoughts. Who are you when the truth cost you something? The question follows you through a narrow morning, through the muted light filtering into your room, through the quiet rituals you've built to steady yourself. This is not the kind of truth that lives in speeches or ideals. This is the truth that asks for sacrifice. The inner fortress you've built holds steady as you step into the day, but you sense immediately that today is different. The air feels heavier, charged. Conversations feel sharper, eyes linger longer. Somewhere ahead, a choice is waiting, patient and merciless. You don't know its shape yet, but your body recognizes it. Your chest tightens not with fear, but with awareness. This is what preparation was for. Nathaniel Branden wrote that living consciously means honoring facts, even when they are uncomfortable. That idea echoes now as reality presents itself without decoration. A situation unfolds where remaining silent would be easier, safer, even beneficial. Speaking honestly would complicate things. It would disappoint someone. It might cost you trust, opportunity, or standing. You feel the old calculations begin to surface, weighing outcomes, scanning for exits. You pause, you breathe, you notice the impulse to bend truth just enough to stay comfortable. It would be subtle, just a half-truth, just an omission. No one would call it a lie. This is where most integrity erodes, not in dramatic betrayals, but in small, reasonable compromises. You see that clearly now, and the clarity is painful. The world around you continues moving, indifferent to your internal struggle. People laugh, phones buzz, deadlines approach. No one is waiting for you to have a moral revelation, and yet everything inside you is at stake. Your self-esteem, as Brandon described it, depends on congruence, on knowing that your actions reflect your values. Break that alignment, and the fortress weakens from within. You remember a time when you chose convenience over honesty. The memory surfaces uninvited. How it felt small at first, justified, harmless. How it grew later into quiet shame. How confidence eroded not because others judged you, but because you knew. That memory presses against the present moment, urging you not to repeat the pattern. Still, fear argues persuasively. You imagine consequences, awkward conversations, lost support, being misunderstood. You imagine standing alone. The fear is not irrational. Truth often isolates before it clarifies. You feel the weight of that possibility settle into your bones. A voice fragments through your thoughts, calm but unwavering. Something you've heard before, perhaps read once, perhaps lived into. You cannot build self-esteem on self-betrayal. The words land like a verdict. You realize that whatever you choose here will echo forward. This is not about being right, it is about being right. The moment arrives. The question is asked. The opening appears. You could dodge it. You could soften it. You could redirect. Time seems to slow, as if the world is giving you space to decide who you are. You feel your heart pounding, loud and insistent. Your mouth is dry, and then you speak. The truth comes out clean, unembellished, unarmed. You do not attack. You do not defend excessively. You simply state what is real. The room shifts. You feel it immediately. Silence follows, thick and uncomfortable. Faces change. Someone looks away. Someone else stiffens. The cost is immediate and undeniable. For a moment, doubt crashes in. Did I do the right thing? Was it worth it? The questions hit hard, relentless. You feel exposed, stripped of protection. This is the aftermath no one romanticizes. Truth does not always feel noble in the moment. Often, it feels lonely. But then something steadier emerges beneath the turbulence, a sense of alignment. Your thoughts are not racing to justify. Your body is tense, but not ashamed. You are not rehearsing alternative versions of what you said. You said what you meant, and that simplicity brings a quiet strength. The day unfolds with subtle consequences. A door closes, a tone shifts, an opportunity becomes uncertain. You feel the sting, sharp and real. Integrity is not rewarded immediately. Sometimes it is punished. You walk through the hours carrying that weight, resisting the urge to regret. Later, alone, the true test begins. Without witnesses, without feedback, without reassurance. You sit with your choice. This is where self-esteem is earned or lost. You look inward and ask honestly, would I change what I said if I could? The answer comes slowly, but firmly. No. That answer changes something fundamental. You feel it. A deeper trust forms, not in the world, but in yourself. You begin to understand that confidence without arrogance requires truth as its backbone. Without it, confidence becomes performance. With it, confidence becomes presence. You recall another principle from Brandon's work, that self-assertiveness means honoring your right to exist, to think, to judge. Today, you exercise that right, not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively, and the cost you paid feels strangely like an investment. In the days that follow, repercussions ripple outward. Some relationships strain, some grow more honest, a few fade entirely. It hurts. Loss always does. But alongside the loss, something else appears. Respect, quiet and unspoken. From others, yes, but more importantly, from yourself. You notice how your posture changes, how you speak with less hesitation, how your internal dialogue softens. You are no longer arguing with yourself at night, replaying compromises. The mental noise reduces. Sleep comes easier. The fortress feels stronger, not taller, but more solid. Yet, the story does not settle into comfort. Truth has a way of attracting more tests. By choosing honesty once, you signal something to the world and to yourself. The signal says you are willing to pay the price. That makes you dangerous to false systems, uncomfortable to those invested in illusion. You sense another challenge approaching, one that will not ask for honesty in words, but honesty in action. A situation where values will clash with ambition, where integrity will compete with reward. The stakes will be higher, the pressure more seductive. As this chapter closes, you stand at the edge of that awareness. You have passed the test of truth in speech. The next will test truth in choice. And that test will not be quiet, because soon you will have to decide not just what is true, but what you are willing to lose for it. The rise of mastery begins with a question that presses against your ribs the moment you wake. What does it truly mean to command yourself? The fire of purpose still burns, steady beneath your skin, but now it hums with a different intensity. It is no longer enough to survive the battles, to withstand resistance, to hold your ground in the face of doubt. Mastery demands something more: precision, repetition, the kind of internal rigor that feels almost cruel at first, but ultimately becomes liberation. You rise from bed before the first light touches the city, and the air itself seems to hum with expectation, charged and relentless. The streets outside are quiet, but your mind is alive with the echo of every choice that has led you here, every failure, every triumph, every lesson remembered and ignored until now. You feel them in your chest, a weight that is also a fuel. The world around you seems unchanged, but you notice it differently. Sidewalks are rougher, textures sharper, colors more intense. The early morning wind bites at your skin, and it feels like the universe is testing your endurance, your awareness. You walk deliberately, not aimlessly, aware of every step, every movement, as if the act of presence itself is part of a larger training. Mastery is not a destination. It is a continuous engagement with the details of life. You see a man struggling with a cart, his effort unnoticed. You could step in and help or ignore him. The choice, seemingly trivial, resonates deeper than you expect. Discipline is exercised in moments like these: small, almost invisible decisions that shape the architecture of character. You remember your early years, how you learned to follow rules without question, to bend to expectations, to prioritize survival over growth. That version of you would have hesitated, assessed, deferred. Now you act, not impulsively, not recklessly, but decisively. You lift the cart, the weight biting into your shoulders, and move it aside. The man mutters thanks, almost inaudible, but it does not matter. Mastery is not validated by recognition. It is built in the act itself. You feel a strange satisfaction, a quiet pride tempered with humility. As the day progresses, you challenge yourself further. Tasks that once seemed routine now demand focus. You do them deliberately, measuring effort, refining technique, observing results. A notebook lies open at your side, filled with reflections and adjustments. You note where you faltered, where your mind wandered, where shortcuts tempted you. Every detail is examined, every weakness cataloged. You sense that this is the edge between competence and excellence, the threshold where skill becomes mastery. Conflict arrives not from external forces, but from within. Fatigue presses against your resolve, urging you to relax standards, to let precision slip, to settle for mediocrity. You feel the temptation to compromise, to abandon rigor for comfort. The voice is subtle, persuasive. You've done enough. Why risk more? Why punish yourself with exacting demands? You pause, letting the words wash over you. And then, quietly, you reject them. Mastery demands persistence. Mastery demands discomfort. Comfort is a symptom of stagnation. You continue, hands and mind attuned to every motion, every outcome, every sensation. The afternoon brings another test. A colleague challenges your method, questioning decisions, criticizing execution. In another life, you might have argued, defended, or justified. Today, you listen, absorbing feedback without ego. You note the value in their perspective, even if it stings. Mastery is not arrogance. It is humility paired with relentless refinement. You incorporate the insight, adjust your approach, and witness immediate improvement. There is a strange thrill in this process, a satisfaction that comes not from applause, but from growth itself. By evening, exhaustion wraps around your limbs like a heavy cloak. Your body aches, your mind hums with awareness, and still you push further. You review your progress, assess what remains incomplete, plan next steps with meticulous care. Sleep will come later, after accountability, after reflection, after measurement. Mastery is never accidental. It is deliberate, methodical, relentless. And yet, in this rigor, you discover freedom. The fire within no longer flickers with uncertainty. It burns consistently, reliably, fueled by discipline rather than impulse. Night arrives with the sky smeared in ink and starlight. You stand by a window, looking out over the city, the lights twinkling like distant, fleeting sparks. You feel the rise of something profound within you, the realization that control over self is more powerful than control over circumstance. You are no longer buffeted by external approval, by comparison, by fear. Your inner fortress has been strengthened by truth, tempered by humility, reinforced by purpose. The fire of mastery courses through your decisions, your actions, your perception. You are rising. But mastery is never without threat. You sense it in the subtle tension along your spine, in the shadow of doubt that flickers even now. External tests will come, opportunities that tempt compromise, challenges that strain patience, moments when values and ambition collide. You know this and you welcome it, because true mastery is forged not in ease, but in trial. The horizon brims with unknowns, waiting to measure your resilience, your focus, your unwavering commitment to self. As you close your eyes for a brief rest, the thought lingers, both thrilling and ominous. You are mastering yourself, but mastery is not static. It grows restless. It demands more, always more. And beyond the quiet of this night, beyond the comfort of incremental success, the next battle awaits, one that will demand every lesson you've learned and test whether the fire you've cultivated can withstand the storm yet to come. The fall of illusions begins with a silence so deep it feels like the air itself has stopped breathing. You wake in the gray light of dawn, but the clarity of morning feels cruel, exposing what you thought was real and what was only imagined. The world outside your window is still, indifferent, yet everything inside you quivers with the sense that what you once relied on, the assumptions, the certainties, the small comforts of familiarity, is unraveling. Illusions, you realize, have been your companions for longer than you knew, and now they are withdrawing their warmth, leaving a cold, raw vulnerability in their place. You move through the streets as if walking through a dream that is fractured. The city hums faintly with life, cars murmuring on distant roads, a dog barking somewhere unseen, but nothing feels tethered to reality. Your mind spins, tracing the contours of what you believed about yourself. Confidence, purpose, control, all of it had felt solid. But now you see the cracks. The first tremors began subtly, a disappointment here, a failure there. The whispers of doubt that you once silenced with persistence or discipline, now they speak louder, clearer, and you can no longer ignore them. You remember the moments that seemed foundational successes that felt permanent, relationships that seemed loyal, choices that felt decisive. You see them differently now, refracted by the light of truth. Some of them were illusions, held together by your need to feel safe, to feel capable, to feel like mastery meant control, and the knowledge of that deception hits like a fist to the chest. Your breath catches and your body trembles with an emotion you almost cannot name, grief for what was never truly yours to hold. The world seems sharper, harsher, the colors colder, the sounds louder. You notice the harshness of a passerby's glance and feel it resonate inside yourself, as if it reflects not their judgment but your own. The illusions you carried allowed you to move lightly, confidently, as though protected from the weight of reality. Without them, every misstep feels heavier, every uncertainty more vivid. Even the fire of purpose, which burns steadily in you for so long, flickers at the edges, challenged by the growing recognition of what is untrue, unreliable, or unsustainable. You sit alone later, the room dim and quiet, the city stretching endlessly outside the window, and let yourself feel the full weight of disillusionment. There is anger, yes, at the world, at others, at the parts of yourself that believed in the comforting narratives. But beneath the anger, there is a more piercing ache, the loss of certainty. You realize that the structures you built, even the inner fortress of integrity and discipline, were sometimes propped up by illusions you hadn't recognized. The revelation is disorienting. You are not weak, but you are exposed, vulnerable, human. A memory surfaces unbidden, a time when someone praised your clarity, your insight, your decisiveness. You recall how easily you accepted the praise, how much you let it define your self-image. That version of you had conflated recognition with reality, approval with truth. And now, standing in the cold awareness of your own assumptions, you feel the remnants of that conflation shatter. A voice, quiet but insistent, echoes in your mind. You believed what you wanted to believe. The words are not accusatory, they are factual, merciless in their honesty. The day continues, each interaction reflecting the subtle erosion of certainty. A colleague questions your judgment, not harshly, but with an insinuation that cuts deeper than a direct attack. You realize that the edge of your competence has always rested on untested premises. Now, those edges feel exposed, sharp, raw. Your hands tremble slightly as you respond, carefully measuring words, aware of the tension building in your chest. Mastery alone is not enough to shield you from the collapse of false assumptions. You feel the vulnerability of learning that some of the truths you held were only shadows, reflections of hope or convenience rather than reality itself. By evening, the weight of revelation presses heavily. You walk along empty streets, lights flickering overhead, your footsteps echoing like the hollow rhythm of your thoughts. Every familiar landmark, every habitual route feels different. The illusion of control you carried over life, over circumstances, over perception dissolves, and the ground feels uncertain beneath your feet. You think of the fire of purpose and the discipline of mastery, and recognize that they are not immune to this fall. They are tools, not shields, and tonight they will be tested not by action, but by truth. Alone in your apartment, you confront the mirror, expecting to find yourself unchanged. Instead, you see someone both familiar and strange. Eyes sharp with recognition, yet clouded with doubt. The reflection is unflinching, revealing cracks you had hidden even from yourself. The illusions of the past are gone, swept aside by the harsh winds of honesty, leaving you staring at the raw architecture of who you are without embellishment. For a moment, the image frightens you, and yet, beneath the fear, there is a fragile seed of clarity. Without illusions, there is no pretense, no borrowed confidence, no false armor. There is only truth. You feel it stirring, quietly but persistently. a realization that the fall of illusions is not destruction, but liberation. The loss of certainty is painful, but it also clears space for authenticity. You may stumble, you may falter, you may confront discomfort you never imagined, but you are no longer bound by false narratives. You can act with honesty, even when it costs you. You can see yourself and the world clearly, without the filter of convenient beliefs. As night deepens, the city hums around you, indifferent as it always has. You feel the tension in your chest, the ache of exposure, and the trembling anticipation of what comes next. The fall of illusions has left you standing in the raw, unshaped terrain of reality, and somewhere beyond that rawness, you sense the challenge that waits to rebuild, to rise, to confront not just the world, but yourself, with clarity and courage. And in the darkness, as your reflection stares back, you know this. The illusions are gone. But the true test, the confrontation with unvarnished reality, is only beginning. The phoenix within begins in the ashes of what you once thought unshakable. You wake to a silence that feels like the aftermath of a storm, the kind that leaves the world stripped bare, raw, and unrecognizable. Dust coats every surface, the remnants of illusions and false certainties that have fallen away, leaving your hands empty, your chest hollow, yet strangely expectant somewhere deep inside. A pulse stirs fragile, hesitant, yet insistent. It is the pulse of something that has burned before, something that has been forged by fire, and now demands to rise again. You do not yet see it clearly. You only feel its heat. The world outside is gray, almost monochrome. The sky heavy with clouds that threaten rain. Streets are slick with remnants of a night storm, reflections fractured in puddles like shattered glass. You move cautiously, each step deliberate, as if touching the ground could trigger collapse. Yet, with every movement, you notice subtle signs of life pushing through. Weeds cracking sidewalks, birds daring to sing despite the drizzle, a faint glow in the distance where a street lamp flickers steadfastly. You feel a strange kinship with these small, defiant sparks. They are reminders that even in devastation, life persists. Even in endings, beginnings wait. You think of the fire of purpose that once guided you, the discipline that tempered you, and the illusions that have just fallen. All of it seems distant, yet inseparable from who you are. The weight of loss presses on your shoulders, and grief rises like smoke from the ground, threatening to choke clarity from your lungs. But within that smoke, something else glimmers. A voice, faint but resolute, whispers, "You are not done. You have not yet been fully forged. The fire is still within." The words are almost lost in the wind, yet they anchor you. You inhale deeply, tasting both the bitterness of endings and the metallic tang of possibility. Your early life flashes before your mind's eye, not the clean, triumphant version you tell others, but the unvarnished truth, the long nights of doubt, the moments when fear dominated action, the times you hid behind comfort, the mistakes you swore would define you. They appear now like embers in a hearth, remnants of fire once raging, now dormant. You recognize the paradox. The very flames that once threatened to consume you are the same ones that can now transform you. The ashes are not barren, they are fertile. As you walk through the empty streets, the city seems almost to breathe with you. Lights shimmer faintly in windows. Neon signs flicker like the pulse of hidden life, and distant sounds, the honk of a horn, the rumble of a train, the drip of rain compose a rhythm that resonates with the heartbeat in your chest. You feel that heartbeat intensify. It is a cadence of awakening, of recognition, of preparation. You are standing at the threshold of rebirth, and though you cannot yet see it fully, the phoenix stirs. Conflict arrives, as it always does, in subtle yet piercing ways. A message comes through, news of betrayal, of trust broken, of opportunities that have slipped while you were lost in reflection. You feel the familiar sting of injustice, the urge to lash out, to return fire for fire. But this time, the instinct does not take you over. You pause, You inhale the ache, the anger, the betrayal. You allow it to exist without consuming you. The fire inside shifts, it does not destroy. It illuminates. This is mastery refined by trial. The ability to feel deeply without being consumed, to transform pain into energy, to rise in the wake of devastation rather than collapse beneath it. You remember the words of mentors, books, voices from the past. Strength is not just endurance, it is renewal. Confidence is not just action, it is rebirth. Each memory feels alive now, not as nostalgia, but as fuel. You begin to take deliberate steps toward reconstruction. Small acts at first, a disciplined routine, a moment of reflection, a commitment to act in alignment with values rather than impulse. Each choice stokes the latent fire. You feel warmth returning to your chest, spreading slowly like the first light of dawn over a blackened landscape. By midday, you confront a mirror, and instead of flinching at your reflection, you see potential. The eyes staring back are wary but determined, familiar but transformed. You catch sight of scars, emotional, psychological, spiritual, but you no longer shrink from them. They are proof of survival, markers of endurance, remnants of fire from which your rebirth will rise. You whisper to yourself, almost reverently, I am not broken, I am becoming. The words are not boastful, they are a quiet declaration of allegiance to your own truth. The evening brings physical exertion, deliberate and grueling, as if you are testing the limits of body and mind alike. You push muscles to fatigue, endure discomfort without complaint, and notice how the fire inside grows with every controlled motion, every deliberate breath. Pain is no longer a punishment, but a teacher. Every drop of sweat, every aching sinew, feels like ash falling from the old self, revealing the raw skeleton of the self you are about to rise into. Night falls, and the city lights flicker like distant stars. You stand on a rooftop, wind whipping through your hair, rain starting to fall again in a gentle drizzle. Below, the streets gleam wet and reflective, mirroring your own clarity. You inhale deeply, tasting both exhaustion and exhilaration, fear and hope entwined. You recognize that rebirth is not gentle, it is violent, messy, disorienting. It demands courage to stand alone, to embrace vulnerability, to face the truth of your own power. As you close your eyes and lift your face to the wind, you feel the stirrings of transformation. The ashes within you are not inert. They are alive, whispering possibilities, calling for action. You are no longer the person defined by illusions, by fear, by doubt. You are becoming the phoenix, rising from the wreckage of certainty and comfort, forged by fire and refined by struggle. And even as the first sparks of rebirth light the darkness within, you sense a shadow at the edge of perception, a test yet unseen, a challenge yet unspoken, a storm that will demand more than courage alone. The phoenix rises, yes, but the fire has not yet been fully tested. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the next trial waits, patient, relentless, ready to measure whether this rebirth will endure or falter. The legacy of influence begins with a whisper in the corridors of your mind, almost inaudible, yet heavy with consequence. What will remain when you are gone? Not possessions, not accolades, not fleeting recognition, but the echo of who you shaped, the impact of the choices you made, the lives you touched, deliberately or inadvertently. You wake before dawn, the world still dark, and feel the weight of responsibility settle over your shoulders like armor, heavy, relentless, yet strangely empowering. Influence is not given. It is forged, measured not in applause, but in authenticity, not in numbers, but in the depth of effect. The city outside is quiet, shrouded in mist. Streetlights glow like lanterns in the fog, flickering with uncertainty. You walk along the familiar streets, each step deliberate, feeling the invisible threads of connection that bind people together. You notice a man helping a child cross the street, a woman carrying groceries with determination etched in every muscle, a pair of friends laughing in shared complicity. Influence is present in these small, often unnoticed interactions. and you recognize that the legacy you will leave begins here, in attention to the subtle, the real, the immediate. Your own past rises alongside these observations. You see the ripple of your earlier decisions, moments of courage, acts of humility, choices forged in integrity. Some echoes bring warmth, a quiet satisfaction. Others bring sharp pangs of regret, words said too harshly, opportunities ignored, kindnesses withheld. You realize that influence is not abstract. It is built from the accumulation of small, consistent actions, each one leaving an imprint, positive or negative. The realization hums through you like electricity, urging vigilance and presence. By midday, you are engaged in a conversation that tests your patience, insight, and judgment. A colleague seeks guidance, not asking for instruction, but for perspective, for understanding. Their trust is subtle, almost fragile, and you recognize it as a measure of the influence you have already cultivated. Your words are careful, measured, honest, unadorned. You speak not to impress, but to illuminate, not to lead by ego, but to guide by clarity. The room responds, not with overt approval, but with the quieter affirmation of recognition. Influence, you realize, is rarely loud. It is persistent. Conflict arises soon after, as it always does. Another person challenges you subtly, testing limits, probing for weakness. Your first instinct is defensive, protective. The old patterns of reaction flicker like shadows behind your eyes. But you pause, remembering the hard-earned lessons of discipline, truth, and humility. Influence is not coercion. It is not dominance. It is trust, earned through consistency and integrity. You respond calmly, assertively, yet without arrogance. Your authority is not claimed, it is demonstrated. As evening approaches, you reflect on the weight of the day. Influence feels like a living thing, fragile, demanding, dynamic. You notice how a single act or word of encouragement, a gesture of respect, a refusal to indulge ego can ripple outward, unseen yet profound. The impact is invisible yet real, and in that invisibility lies the challenge. Sustaining influence requires persistence without immediate validation, effort without guaranteed acknowledgement. You feel the tension, the responsibility, the quiet pressure of legacy pressing down upon you. Night falls, and you stand by a window overlooking the city, lights shimmering like constellations scattered across the earth. You feel the echoes of your past, the fire of purpose you have carried, the mastery you have cultivated, all converging into a singular awareness. Legacy is not a gift of fortune. It is the culmination of every choice, every principle, every act lived deliberately. The realization is both exhilarating and terrifying. The opportunity to shape life beyond your immediate reach is immense, but the responsibility is equal. In solitude, you consider those who will follow, those who may look to you not for answers, but for a model of integrity, courage, and authenticity. You sense that influence is as much about what you do not do as what you do restraint, listening, truthfulness, presence. You feel the quiet gravity of the responsibility to leave impact without oppression, to guide without controlling, to inspire without demanding. It is a balance delicate and difficult, yet it is the crucible in which true legacy is formed. And even as you feel the satisfaction of understanding, a shadow edges the corner of your awareness. Influence is tested most rigorously when it is challenged, when temptation to abandon principle is strongest, when the stakes are personal and the consequences immediate. Somewhere beyond the reach of your sight, that challenge waits, patient, unrelenting, and poised to measure whether the legacy you aspire to will withstand the trials to come. You sense it now, not as fear, but as anticipation. The work of influence, of legacy, is never complete. It will demand courage, vigilance, and relentless honesty. And as the night stretches on, the pulse of responsibility thunders in your chest, reminding you that the true test lies not in recognition, but in endurance. The phoenix has risen before. Now it is time to shape the world it touches. The shadow lingers. The next trial approaches, and the story of your influence is far from over. The endless journey begins with a question that presses against the back of your skull like the wind before a storm. When will it end? The answer does not come. It never has, and perhaps it never will. You awaken before dawn once more, the horizon barely visible, a sliver of pale light cutting through the darkness. The city lies beneath you like a sleeping beast, streets winding and glimmering wet, distant traffic humming faintly, an orchestra of life continuing despite your own private reckonings. You feel the weight of every choice you have made, every lesson endured, every fire survived, pressing against your chest. And yet there is no sense of closure, only momentum. The push forward, the call of the next challenge, the next transformation. You rise, stiff with fatigue, and step into the pre-dawn air, cool and sharp against your skin. Each inhale fills you with awareness, a reminder that mastery, purpose, truth, and influence, all the pillars you have built, are not final victories but tools for the road. The world looks familiar, yet different. Details are sharper, colors more vivid, the quiet broken by the small, persistent sounds of life. A dog barking, the distant rumble of a delivery truck, footsteps echoing on wet pavement. The city is alive as you feel inside, and you know that the journey you are on is not a straight path, but a winding, endless landscape of challenges, choices, and self-discovery. You remember the earliest days, when doubt dominated every step, when confidence felt borrowed, when fear and hesitation seemed like permanent fixtures of existence. How far you have come feels almost unreal. The fire of purpose, once flickering and inconsistent, now burns steadily, tempered by countless trials. You have faced truth, wrestled with illusions, risen from ashes, and built influence. Yet standing here in the cold pre-dawn, you feel a familiar restlessness, a gnawing sense that the journey does not end with achievement. It never ends. Each lesson, each victory, each insight is only a waypoint, not a destination. The streets begin to fill slowly with the first stirrings of the city commuters, early morning runners, vendors opening stalls. You observe them not as an outsider, but as a participant in a larger rhythm, aware of the subtle ways human choices shape the world. You notice kindness exchanged, patience tested, pride and frustration intermingling in quiet, ordinary ways. This is the arena of life. Small moments, multiplied endlessly, shaping character as surely as grand victories. Your influence here, as in every space you occupy, is both fleeting and permanent, a paradox that humbles and energizes you simultaneously. Conflict arises, as it always does, in forms both subtle and unavoidable. An unexpected confrontation challenges your patience. A decision you thought simple becomes a test of values. An opportunity tempts compromise. The old instincts, the desire to react quickly, to protect ego, to cling to comfort, surface, familiar as muscle memory. You recognize them instantly, but now, with every pillar you have cultivated responsibility, truth, mastery, influence, you respond differently. You breathe, you assess, you act deliberately, aware that every choice is part of a larger pattern, an endless weaving of consequences that extends beyond your immediate perception. The day progresses with a rhythm that blends action and reflection. You encounter people who seek guidance, others who test limits, moments of solitude that demand introspection. Each interaction, each observation, each small decision feels charged with significance, as though the fabric of your own journey is interwoven with every other life you touch. Influence is exercised not through dominance, but through integrity. Mastery is tested not by ease, but by endurance. Purpose is renewed, not in comfort, but in the relentless pursuit of alignment between values and action. By evening, the city transforms again. Neon glows shimmer on rain-soaked streets, casting fractured light across windows and puddles. Reflections bending and shifting like memory itself. You pause to watch, noticing how impermanence shapes perception. Nothing is static, nothing fixed, and this impermanence mirrors your own journey. Achievements fade, lessons evolve, challenges multiply, The fire within you, once a single flame, now spreads across multiple dimensions: resolve, compassion, insight, influence. You feel both exhausted and alive, aware that the journey demands persistence beyond fatigue, growth beyond comfort, courage beyond certainty. Night deepens, and you find yourself alone on a rooftop, the wind biting, the city sprawling endlessly below. You sense the passage of time differently now, not as a straight line, but as a spiral, each loop bringing new insight, new challenge, new responsibility. You understand, with a clarity sharpened by experience, that the journey is infinite. Mastery is provisional, influence is continuous, truth is eternal, but ever shifting. Purpose must be renewed with each day. And you, though changed and strengthened, are both traveler and witness, perpetually moving, perpetually learning. A quiet realization settles over you. The end you sought never existed, and perhaps it was never meant to. The journey itself is the legacy, the fire, the test, and the reward. And yet, even as you embrace this truth, a shadow stirs at the edge of awareness. A challenge unseen, a moment unforeseen, a trial that will demand more than what you have yet conceived. The wind carries it, whispering across the rooftops, brushing against your skin, leaving an icy anticipation in its wake. You close your eyes, feeling the pulse of the city, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, and the lingering heat of every fire you have carried. You are weary, yes, but awake.